Welcome to the Empowered Flow podcast. I'm Tris Alexandra, holistic clinical nutritionist, women's health and menstrual cycle educator, and mama. Join me and experts in nutrition, fitness, mindset, and holistic healing as we explore conversations to open your mind to a different way of thinking on all things women's health, hormones, periods, cyclical living, and fertility. Whether you're seeking knowledge, inspiration, or a supportive community, you've found your tribe. Let's dive in. In today's episode, I speak to Karen, who is a movement and health coach who has always had a strong passion for holistic wellness and helping others to embrace movement through the power of Pilates. After her own recent health journey, she knows too well the importance of optimal health on the physical, emotional, and mental body. To complement her Pilates and PT qualifications, Karen has now gone on to study nutrition and women's holistic health coaching to continue to bring quality offerings to her wellness studios and the Viva Life community. She is the creator of Viva Life Pilates and Fitness Studios located in Diamond Creek and Yarrambat, which specializes in all kinds of Pilates, rehabilitation, pre- and postnatal, mat work, and reformer. Today's episode is a little bit different as I speak to Karen about her 2 pregnancy and birth experiences as part of my fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum series. Her first experience left her feeling disempowered in the medical system and had her experiencing some postnatal depression in the postpartum period. She then went on to educate and empower herself for her second pregnancy and birth experience, having a really empowering and incredible experience again in the medical system for her second pregnancy and birth. I know you'll walk away feeling really empowered and inspired by Karen's stories, and you'll hear that it left me in absolute happy tears towards the end. Kaz, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today, sharing and talking all about your birth stories. I want to get you first to introduce yourself and share with everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do. Let's get to know you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tris, for having me. I'm very excited and really honored to be able to have an opportunity to look back over my birth stories, which is to come. But my name's Karen. I am the creator of Viva Life Pilates and Fitness Studios, and we've got 2 gorgeous studios located in Diamond Creek and Yarrambat. Our studios are really, yes, we offer Pilates and fitness and movement, but they're just a real holistic focus. So we really welcome women from all walks of life, and we encourage women just to come as they are. So, when a lot of people say, oh, I've got to get fit before I join a gym, or I've got to, so we encourage people just to walk in as they are and be embraced and encouraged and nurtured by a really supportive community. And our teachers are all amazing. And we just have a really, really beautiful space that offers women to feel confident, capable, and embrace movement through Pilates and yoga and a range of different services that we offer.
I love that. And I think not only do you have these Pilates studios, but you really have this beautiful welcoming community, and you also do things outside of the studio. Yeah. So you recently ran a retreat, and I was really honored to be part of a women's wellness event that you ran as well. And it was just it truly was such a warm, embracing environment where women could just come in and feel really supported and connected. And I thought that was really beautiful as well.
Yeah, it's really special. I think over the years, it's definitely changed from we offer all kinds of Pilates, clinical, mat, bar, then we've got yoga and we've got group PT. But I think now as the years have changed and the importance on movement for mental health has become such a big focus. And especially after my recent journey navigating breast cancer challenges over the last year, my focus and my shift on the whole business approach has been, let's encourage women or support women how to support their physical body, their mental body, their emotional body, and their spiritual body. So now, that's how we reflect. That really reflects in how we show up in the services that we offer. So it's not just a gym that you come to. It's really a space where you feel you can meet all of those needs. So that's why we did the Women's Health and Wellness workshop recently. Because I had so many clients that I would hear talk about their struggles of perimenopause or menopause. And so being able to have all those women from experts in their field like yourself and understand that it's not just about exercising and smashing our bodies to do as much workouts as we can. It's so much more than that. It's about how do we nourish ourselves from the inside out, which is where your talk was really powerful. How do we nourish our supplementing needs, whether it's actual testing of our hormones and figuring out where our body might be lacking. So that's where the naturopath came in. And yeah, we just had a lot of fun bringing all these women's of experts in their field. Like we had the chiro, like how amazing was Demi's talk about?
Amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
And I learned so much from the other practitioners as well. But yeah, do share
Yeah.
who spoke and what they spoke about as well.
Well, Demi was a chiropractor, but when you say chiropractor, she was so much more than a chiropractor. She really tapped into the emotional blockages that we hold within our body. So she offers some amazing NET, and she's located at Superwell in Eltham. And she's someone I've been seeing. So I think what was really beautiful is that all the women that came and spoke, like yourself and Emily, the naturopath,
Yeah.
Adriana, who's an osteo, these are all women that I see personally. So it's just really nice that everything that I suppose I experienced through maintaining optimal holistic health has been an opportunity for me to bring these women to the Viva community and be like, trust me, you've got to see these ladies. You won't know, your life will change forever. So that's what my focus is just how to keep bringing the best to our community, in all the ways that we can.
Yeah, I love that. I know there was also Lisa, who I want to mention as well, because I've been listening to her podcast, Self with Lisa Clark, and her podcast is beautiful. And she's one of your yoga teachers. Am I correct?
Yes. Lisa is such just a absolute shining star. She's such a beautiful woman. So really interesting how Lisa and I connected. I was recommended her podcast, or we'd connected through social media, and I was listening to her podcast. And honestly, some of her, if you've been listening to it, Triss, you'll know it's just so beautiful hearing her speak. Like I just think you walk away just with clarity and guidance, and I don't know how to put it in words exactly, but you just feel good about your day.
Yeah.
You've got the tools to equip you for whatever's coming your way. But I found listening to her podcast through some really challenging times over the last year, and then I had the opportunity to then work together. So she reached out and said she's moved back to Melbourne, and she's now started teaching yoga at both our studios, and then she came and did yoga on our recent retreat that we just ran in Wilson's Prom at the nature retreat that we ran for 30 women in Wilson's Prom. So I'm very blessed with the women that I get to work alongside. They've all got something, pretty special to offer the world, and I'm very blessed to have them in my team.
Amazing. And as do you as well. And I love the way that you're bringing women together to connect and to support them through all those different elements of holistic health. Because like you said, it really is, we look at health as a really big holistic picture. There's our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual selves that all need support and looking after in different ways. And I think having a team around us and women around us that can make such a big difference to our health. And then the other side of things that I really find powerful is listening to women's stories. So I heard your story, which was just I just don't even know if I can find the words, like just the challenges that you've been through with your health and your journey. And I also like just the part of it that's just really inspiring with your story in your ability to advocate for yourself, to find that strength within yourself was just incredible. And I really just, I can't find the words for it, but I think just sharing stories and sharing wisdoms is just such a powerful way for all of us to help us on our own health and healing journeys as well. And that's part of why I really wanted to have you on as part of this pregnancy and fertility pregnancy postpartum series that I'm doing at the moment on the podcast, because I wanted to share, we talked about sharing your birth stories for that exact reason, for sharing wisdoms, for sharing stories, for helping other women to realize that they're not alone in their journeys, and also so that women could know that you can have an empowering journey, or you can have challenges and still come out the other side of it as well.
Absolutely. And I think going back to what you said before about advocating for my health, I feel like I really gained that knowledge and that strength with my second pregnancy, to be honest. So when I was then faced with the challenges of being told I had stage 3 breast cancer, I knew that I'd advocated for my health before, and trusted my instincts, and I knew how to listen to my body and my, that gut feeling of, your body better than anybody. And that helped me navigate I suppose, the challenges I was faced with the conventional treatment plan for cancer. So I think advocating for your health and encourage like this, sharing stories and sharing wisdom from people that have walked this path before us, it just helps lift women up to know that they are completely capable of taking it into their own hands in a safe way.
For sure. So where do you want to start? Because you have 2 children.
Yes, I have 2 beautiful boys.
Yes. And how old are they?
I have a 16-year-old, Tyler, and I have a 3.5-year-old little Billy.
Amazing. Where do you want to start with your birth stories? Do you want to go back to the first? Do you want to, you just lead the way, like take us through what
all right.
your experiences have been.
Going back to the first took me a while to think about that because it's been 16 years. So I had to make some notes, but I must say, actually, it was after my first son that I stumbled across the world of Pilates. So it's definitely a thanks to him that I got into the industry that I'm in now, because I just ended up signing myself up to local mums and bubs classes, and that really ignited my passion. But let's go back. So 16 years ago, baby number 1, I was living in Darwin. So after I'd finished high school, I'd moved straight up to Darwin to live with my then partner who joined the army. So he was posted to Darwin, and I was working as a flight attendant. And thinking about this time, it feels like a whole nother person's life. But yes, it was a lifetime ago, it feels like. Working as a flight attendant. And then I remember on just our normal trips, we were flying into Kupang in Indonesia, and I started feeling really nauseous every time the plane would take off. And I remember thinking, oh, don't tell me I'm starting to get motion sickness. Is this something that you can get later in life? Or I didn't really know what was going on. And then sure enough, every time that the seatbelt light would go off and we were allowed to get out of the seat, I'd go straight to the bathroom and just vomit. And I was like, oh, this is the worst. Have you ever had to vomit into an airplane toilet? It is gross. And so I then I got stuck in another country because I couldn't fly home. And I remember telling my mum about it, and she's like, I think you're pregnant. I'm like, no, Mum, what are you talking about? So sure enough, I did a test, and mum's always right. Sure enough, I was pregnant. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I've just, I'm living up in Darwin, and I've got this wonderful job that I get to travel around the country and the world. And I didn't want to give that up. I wasn't quite ready. So it was definitely a surprise. And I'd been with my partner a long, long time, and it felt like, we were ready for that next step, but it was definitely a surprise. And so living in Darwin, the public system up there, I just wasn't too comfortable in. I was born and bred in Melbourne, so it was a fairly new town for me still. And so I just went through the private system and signed up with a well-known obstetrician up there. But I had no education around pregnancy. I had no idea what was about to happen to my body. I was one of those people that just completely wrapped myself in bubble wrap. I didn't do any exercise. I didn't understand the importance of nutrition. And I just remember having no preparation as to what was to come, really. And so I had my regular checkups, and I would take my folate from the pharmacy grade, multivitamins, and I had gained more and more weight as the trimesters went on. And I remember just putting it down to living in Darwin and it being so hot and humid, like getting pregnant or just being pregnant in a wet season is pretty terrible. Like you just swell.
Oh my goodness.
You swell.
I've been to Darwin in a wet season, not pregnant, and that was hard enough.
It was horrible. So I just remember feeling like my body was changing in a really negative way, and I just that mindset was unhealthy from the start, and I felt like I had no support because I wasn't around family, and I just had no understanding of pregnancy, really.
Mm.
So I was feeling pretty miserable going into the birth, but I was just very much guided by the doctors, and I'll do what I'm told to do, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I remember having my 39-week checkup, and I was told at that appointment that I had preeclampsia. And so they induced me the next day. And I think with preeclampsia, he'd only tested, there was apparently extra protein in my urine. So I'm not too sure exactly how they test thoroughly for preeclampsia these days, but it was a simple pickup of extra protein in my urine that he decided to then induce me the
Yeah.
next day, saying it was preeclampsia. So sure enough, 8 o'clock the next morning, I was then induced. And I remember it being hours and hours and hours before anything was happening. And I was walking up and down the hospital and eating all the food that I could possibly eat.
Mhm.
Hospital just, kill time. And my mum had flown up. I was very grateful. She got on the plane as soon as possible and she'd flown up to be there. So I had my mum, my husband, and my little brother in the room. It was actually really
Oh,
special.
wow.
My
Yeah.
little brother was like 13 years younger than me. So he was like, what is going on here? What's about to happen?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but it was very special for having them there. So I remember it getting more and more intense. Like I said, this is very vague, so it was 16 years ago, but
Yeah.
more and more intense as the contractions started to come on, and mum was there with a notepad timing everything. And then I remember having a change of midwives, and the new midwife I had was she just didn't have any bedside manner. She was very grumpy, and she was like, this is what we're going to do. And she'd upped the intensity of the what's the
The like Pitocin or like the induction
Yes,
medication.
induction medication, yes.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly it came on very intense, and then I asked for an epidural, and luckily I was able to get that. And I'd always sort of thought that was what I would do because
Yeah.
I didn't know what the pain was going to be like. Anyway, so I had the epidural, and then I remember thinking, well, now I can't. I've gone from feeling contractions to now I can't feel anything. I couldn't feel anything from below my tummy down, and I
Mm.
felt it was almost scary because I felt like I'd been paralyzed.
Yeah,
Feel my
right.
toes. I'm like, what's going on here? This is weird. So they then said, look, we can give you, um, you can have control over the dosage so that you can pull it back a bit. And so I did that. And then eventually I could start to feel the contractions again because I just hated the feeling of not feeling anything
Mm.
from the spinal block altogether. So then as the hours went on, I think it got to about 12 hours in now. And then I had that urge to want to push. And I remember the midwife saying, okay, well, when we tell you you can push, but when we tell you you can't push, you've got to stop.
Yeah.
And I thought I would have control over that, but oh my gosh, I did not have any control over that. When I was told to push, I would push, but then when they were saying stop, I'm like, I can't stop, because I
Yes.
think that he was, crowning so much that that urge to then just let the baby come, let it all flow. And so, that's right. I remember they had to break my waters because they couldn't get my waters weren't breaking naturally, so they ended up having
Yeah.
to use a tool to break the waters. But yes, once I was able to finally push, and I was probably only 45 minutes of that real intense transition period. And then I had this beautiful little boy screaming the hospital down. I remember the lungs being so loud. And I knew I was having a little boy at that stage. So we were, the joy of tears and all the stuff that all the emotions that flow over you when you have a baby. But I just remember no one preparing me as to what to expect when you first stand up out of that hospital bed. I was like,
Mm.
no one told me that my bits would be hanging down near my knees. And like, I was like, what the hell has happened to my body? I didn't know I had such big stretch marks under my tummy because I couldn't see under my belly for so many months. And it was just this moment of standing in the shower crying, like,
Mm.
what's happened to my body and the changes, but also so happy that I've got this beautiful baby and I was able to bring him safely into the world. Um,
Yeah.
and then there was the challenges of I ended up staying in hospital for 7 days because I had a lovely private room and my family was able to visit whenever they wanted, and my husband was able to stay with me at the time. And then I remembered the whole challenge of breastfeeding, and breastfeeding was really, really, really tricky. My boobs became so engorged to the point where they felt like absolute bricks. I could not get any, I couldn't even touch them without them hurting, but we couldn't get any milk out because the baby couldn't latch. It was, my
Mm.
milk was so hard. So again, had nothing prepared me for the breastfeeding challenge. I read nothing about breastfeeding. I remember mum just taking me shopping to buy bras, and she was like, "You're going to need this size." I'm like, "That's insane, mum. My boobs have never been that big in my life, as if I'm going to need that bra." And sure enough, my boobs got so big so quickly.
Oh, they grow ginormous, don't they?
Holy moly. And I was like, this is awesome. But why are they so sore? I kind of appreciate them. Anyway, and then I just remember the midwife that I had just again was just very, she either was over her job or she just, had been in the industry a long time and just really didn't have any empathy or much bedside manner. So she would say things like, "Oh, you've just got a difficult baby and that's why it's not, he's not latching," and starting to say things, I suppose, in a negative light that made me think that I was already failing or that something
Mm.
was wrong with my baby. I really think when a woman's just gone through that phase where you're so vulnerable and your world has completely just changed, you've just gone, you've just birthed from a young woman into a wise woman who's now a mother.
Mm.
You've gone through this transition as well, but hearing some of their comments really made me feel like something was either wrong with my baby or I wasn't doing a good enough job. And so
Yeah.
that started to spiral for me as well. And I remember having to I had to start expressing because I couldn't get the milk out. So they then would say, one midwife would say it's okay to express, and then the next midwife would say, "What are you doing expressing? Your baby's not going to, if you give the baby a bottle, it's not going to know how to go back to the nipple." So it's just all this confusion and mixed inputs around what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I stayed in the hospital for that 7 days because I needed that support just to sort of get an idea of how to breastfeed. But in the end, rather than having the midwives, I got a lactation consultant to come in. And I remember when she arrived, I just cried and I said, "Everyone's been horrible. I just want
Oh,
someone to
goodness.
listen and support me." And so she was really, really good because I really wanted to breastfeed if I was able to. But I was also okay that if I wasn't able to, then that's okay too. So I remember coming home and not long after, so my mum had flown home and probably my baby was probably 2 or 3 months old. And my partner at the time had to then fly to an overseas trip for the army. And so he was going to be gone for a couple of months. And I was like, there is no way I'm going to stay up in Darwin on my own with a newborn baby and have no idea how to navigate all of these new challenges.
And
And so
have no support as well. Like it's just,
and 21, I was like, I'm just a
oh,
baby myself still.
yes.
But even though I didn't feel like it, I
Yeah,
definitely look back and I was like, wow, I had so much learning to do. But having a baby that young, you grow up pretty damn quickly, that's for
I
sure.
bet.
Um,
Mm,
but I was like, no, I'm going to fly home and be around the supportive family. And I know that my mum was grateful to then, be able to be there to help me through that.
yeah.
I definitely look back now and I feel like there was absolutely postnatal depression, but just no
Mm,
one, I didn't, how do you diagnose that unless you've got the right support or people to talk to about that? I didn't really know. I just assumed it was all a part of the motherhood challenges.
yeah.
So,
And do you
yeah.
feel like a lot of that came from that lack of support? Like obviously you had your mum and your family, but I
Mm.
mean the not having the support or the continuity of care through pregnancy or your labor and postpartum
Yeah,
experience, like just not
absolutely.
going.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And I feel like my obstetrician was he was a male, which I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like the appointments were very short, sharp, in, out. There was no real, how are you going? Like, how are you
Mm.
going? Not just what's your
Mm.
baby growing and how are you going with everything. And there was no real education around what to do or how I could be supporting my body through the right nutrition and all that sort of stuff. So, I think from being, I was a flight attendant and I was fit, and then I'd gained 30 kilos, and then all of a sudden got this new baby, and my body's completely changed, and I'm like feeling alone. So it was no wonder that I kind of spiraled into a postnatal
Yeah.
depression because I just didn't really know what I was doing.
It's a
But
lot of change to go through on so many levels. Like physically, your body's changing, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like you've just gone through that huge matrescence transition period of like maiden to mother, and that in itself is massive, massive the first time. But I think you still experience it for subsequent, your
yeah,
next babies as
yeah.
well.
Well, the trauma that we have in our first can always definitely carry on to the second.
Mm, yeah.
But instead of seeing it as trauma, I was like, no, I'm going to use this to equip me to know what to do with my second and be prepared and be empowered. And that's what my journey became, is so that when I did fall pregnant with my second, I was on a mission. I was really on a mission to make sure that I empowered myself and took some control into my own hands so that I had a much different experience. So I suppose fast forward 16 years, no, 12 years, sorry, 12 years fast forward, because they're 3.5 years apart. Sorry, 12 years apart. And then Billy's 3.5 years now. So
Yeah.
I remember, I had a new, I'm with a new partner. My first partner and I separated when Tyler was just 18 months old. So I very much had to do the motherhood journey on my own, which again, you learn and you grow. And I look at my 16-year-old now and I'm like, oh my God, I definitely did something right, because you're amazing. I'm so grateful. But we were a team. Like he was, learning with me as we went through that journey. But so fast forward to 2019, married with a beautiful husband who supports me in every angle. And we were taking a road trip up to Queensland to visit some friends for New Year's Eve. And I remember feeling nauseous in the car, and I thought, oh, don't tell me this is car sickness. Same sort of situation. I'm like blaming it on the motion sickness of the plane taking off, and now I was blaming it on the car trip. And yeah, sure enough, we got to our friend's house in Queensland, and I was still feeling nauseous, and I was telling my friend that I've just been feeling sick every morning, and she's had 3 babies. She'd had 3 babies recently. So it was, she just laughed and walked out with a pregnancy test and said, it's New Year's Eve. You should probably pee on this stick, because we had a big night planned.
Yeah.
And so I did, and sure enough, she was right. And I was like, oh, the look on my husband's face, because it was not how we wanted to find out either.
Was it planned?
No, there was no plan for either of my babies. Both of my babies were a big surprise. So the look on his face was priceless, in the sense that he looked like he'd seen a ghost. And I think for us, it was like, this is not how we wanted to find out, like, around other people, or just, to figure out whether I could drink that night or not. It was very, just not what we had visioned,
Yes. Yep.
So I remember our friend that was driving, we were headed back to the hotel, and my friend, he said, geez, guys, we literally could have dropped a pin in the car. There was not one word spoken. It was silent. And I think for us, it was like, we had so many plans. 2020 for us was meant to be, we had overseas retreats planned. We had business expansion ideas. We had renovations. So a baby was not necessarily on the cards for that year, but it was definitely something we talked about doing eventually.
So you'd started Viva Life Pilates by this stage?
Yeah. I started Viva in 2011. So when my first boy was only little. Anyway, beautiful. So I was very work driven, and for us, I think it had to be a surprise for Chris and I, because we were the kind of people that would have kept putting it off, and then realized that, the clock was ticking. So we were lucky to have a surprise baby, and we were so lucky. I suppose the babies, they choose us, right? Like they know this world.
Yeah.
And this boy definitely decided when he was coming into the world, ended up being perfect timing, because it was only, I was 12 weeks, and I announced it to friends and family in my work community that I was going to have a baby in September 2020. And then 2 weeks later, we went into our first lockdown. So Melbourne lockdown, that was a very, very interesting time. And I thought, well, all I know is work. And what else do I do in lockdown but grow a baby? So it ended up being beautiful timing, to be honest, because it meant that I could really just give my my body and my baby the nourishing and the time that I needed. And as stressful as lockdowns were for a business owner, and I had two studios at the time, one in Montmorency and the other in Diamond Creek. I ended up closing down the Montmorency one when I was about 6 months pregnant because I just had no idea where the end of lockdowns were going to come. And
Yeah.
being 6 months pregnant, I thought, no, this is time to reevaluate my priorities for one, and downsize. So we
Yeah.
did that.
Did you
And
find it hard being pregnant during lockdown, or did you find, like, just because, obviously not being able to see family and friends as much, or did you find that it just gave you that space to really focus on you and your partner? And
both. I definitely
yeah.
struggled with the fact that I couldn't celebrate it with, I just wanted
Mm.
someone to rub me on the tummy and be able to gloat in the pregnancy glow and things like that. But I did miss that. Because I love connection in general. So I miss connection, and
Yeah.
I missed being able to share that really special time. And I remember, because we were going in and out of lockdown, I had a baby shower planned, and then we went back into another lockdown. So I ended up having to do my baby shower on Zoom, and that's just different. But it was also
Yeah.
very special because my friends did drive-bys of presents or had things delivered, and it was still really special. And it all makes an amazing story now, I suppose. When I tell Billy when he's older what we were going through, it's such a crazy time. And
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing was definitely not being able to see my family or have people see me go through the stages as I grew this beautiful big belly.
Yeah.
But we had pivoted to moving our classes online. So rather than obviously the studios were closed, but we had moved all of our offerings to online. So here I was at 39 weeks pregnant offering online classes. And the clients that were pregnant through that journey as well probably really enjoyed being able to do that with me. So I look back recently, I was looking back at our online portal, which is called Viva Life to You. And it's got so many classes of me all the way through my journey. And it's just really nice to be able
Oh,
to look back at
beautiful.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Did you go into this pregnancy with a different mindset or frame of mind, or a different, like, had you had any plans along the way of, like, I want to do things differently during pregnancy and labor when it came to your care, or how did that look for you?
Yes, absolutely. So as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was very much focusing on my food, for one, my diet, my nutrition. And then I started working with my naturopath to make sure I was getting the right supplements and the good quality supplements. Like we know now that there's definitely better grade supplements or multivitamins that you can be having. So I definitely took an absolute different path as to my first pregnancy. And I inquired about the MGP group. So I was able to get in with the midwifery group practice? They're
Is
just at
that
the Mercy in Heidelberg.
is that at the hospital where they do the, like, continuity of care program through the
Yes.
hospital?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
purely with the midwife group, and they were amazing. So I
Beautiful.
jumped on that opportunity because my sister had had 4 home births. So she was very much like, why don't you have a home birth? And especially because we were in the lockdowns, I really did go down that path of considering whether I do a home birth or not.
Yeah.
But my husband was petrified because he'd never had a baby before, and he's like, I don't really
Mm.
want to go down that path. Like it scares me too much. Um, so when I had come across the midwifery group practice, I felt like it was a perfect balance of both, because I could labor at home for as long as possible, and then we come into hospital when I was ready to have the baby. So, and I mean, there's a small group of midwives, but you generally see the same midwife the whole way through. And that
Yeah.
was really, really special because it turned out that the midwife I had was one of the home birth doulas or midwives for my sister. And we had no idea it was the
Oh,
same. It
wow.
just happened to be my sister's talking about this midwife. She's like, call Mel. I'm sure she'd be able to do it. I'm like, Mel, my midwife's called Mel. And so I asked her and she goes, no way. That's the same person. So I felt very
That's
blessed with
beautiful.
that.
And
Yeah, it's really
I
special.
think, I actually think I wish all women had access to like continuity of care with midwives, because it makes such a difference to your pregnancy, labor and birth experience.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
You
and
feel
any,
supported.
yeah, it's like you're building a relationship with someone that you can actually go to and connect with and ask questions and, you know, talk about the things that are coming up for you throughout pregnancy, because so much comes up, right?
Mm.
And you just, yeah, you just have that support person or support people, even if it's a couple of people. And like, I've only ever experienced continuity of care through my pregnancies because we've had private midwives.
Mm.
But the difference in the stories that I hear from like friends, and clients, for, you know, the difference between having that continuity of care and having that support compared to just going to see different people all the time and being told different things. And it's like night and day.
Absolutely. And it really was for my pregnancies. Like the two were night and day. It was so different. And
Mm,
I just felt so much more seen and heard and understood in my
mm,
second time around. And these women were amazing. I think the hardest part was that my husband couldn't come to any scans. So that was really sad for him because we knew it was going to be our own baby. Like, sorry, we were only going to have the one more baby together.
yeah.
Well, it was my second, but his first. And so that was really sad that he didn't get to be a part of seeing those scans. But, I was able to get the little DVD and things like that. So we going through the challenges of what changes were put in place, what we were forced to do by the government, by not being allowed to have your husbands at
Mm,
scans. Or at one point they were talking about not letting the husbands be in the birth, which was mind blowing. I'm like, this is
yeah.
ridiculous. And if that stayed the case, I probably would have pushed more for a home birth. Um, because that just angered me. I was like, I don't understand how they can do that. Or,
Yeah.
take a baby away from the mother, but because she's got COVID, like I was just, all of those things were starting to scare me. And I'm like, what is about to happen?
Mm,
So there was definitely a level of uncertainty. But I just felt a lot more empowered and equipped to take back some control as to what was going to happen for my body. Um, and my midwife was great because she would advocate for me the whole way through. I made it really clear I didn't want any doctors in the room unless there was an emergency. I just wanted it to be my husband and myself and the midwife whenever she needed to be there. And the plan was that, I'd wrote up my birth plan as such, but I
mm,
was also very flexible around that. I wasn't going to be like, this is how it has to go. I wasn't, going to come in controlling because I understand that definitely doesn't always go to plan. But I said, this is what I would love to achieve. Can you help me support me in doing so? So I was very, very grateful to have Mel advocate for me and my needs the whole way through. But I got to 40 weeks and my midwife Mel was going on annual leave. She was going on a trip. So she's like, Kaz, if you don't have this baby the next week,
oh,
I'm not going to be able to be there for you. And I was devastated. So I was trying everything. Well, hang on, before I fast forward to the 40-week mark, I was at 37 weeks and my baby was breech. And
mm-hmm.
so I was obviously, if baby stayed breech, I wouldn't have been able to have a home birth. So it was just all these things that were happening that I was like, all right, just keep tackling it one challenge at a time. And I started seeing a Chinese doctor and I was having acupuncture every single day to try and get this baby to turn. There's this moxa treatment that they do you hold on your little pinky toe for like half an hour a day and it's meant to help stimulate the baby to rotate and all this stuff. I tried it all. I
Yep.
even enrolled in the Spinning Babies program. So I'm not sure
Yes.
if you've heard of Spinning
Yep.
Babies.
Yep. I did spinning babies. Yep.
Oh, how cute is it? So I literally remember my husband laughing so hard. He's walked in and I'm lying upside down on this ironing board that was resting on my bed so that I'm trying to get this baby to rotate. And then he was really good. He got all involved and he was trying to do like the shimming of you have like
Yes.
the scarf around or the hammock around
Ah,
the belly and you're trying to
that's
shimmy.
so delightful in pregnancy. Like, take some of that like heaviness and the weight and everything off.
And he was amazing. Like we did these stretches and we were trying to do these like hip opening stretches and all this stuff. And I think what the midwife had said is like, Karen, your core is so on and active that it's actually not allowing the baby to move. So all this stuff that I had worked towards of getting a stronger core, I had to let go of all that. I've got to reverse everything that I know. So it was all about letting go and relaxing and relaxing my pelvic floor. I'd sit at the dinner table and I had to have this certain seat just so I could allow my tummy to drop. And it was really interesting trying to go through that, the challenges of having a breech baby. And I was so determined to have a natural birth. And at this stage, the midwife had said, look, if the baby remains as a breech, then we're going to have to get you in for a cesarean, and then you'd have to see an obstetrician.
Yeah.
So that
can I just ask, did you were you active? Did you exercise and do Pilates throughout your whole pregnancy this time?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was the big difference, that my diet, my nutrition and my movement was so different to the first time. I didn't wrap myself in bubble wrap like I did the first time.
Yeah.
Still put on a lot of weight, but I also was like, okay, this is just my body and this is okay. But I was a lot more accepting of it. I think, I put on 30 kilos with my first, and then with my second, I put on just, probably 28 kilos.
Yeah.
So, but I
did you feel better though? Like, did you feel like
better? I felt stronger. I felt so much stronger. I felt more mentally prepared, and movement for me was for my mental health, and especially in lockdown. Like, I had to film a lot for our online classes anyway, so that kept me active.
I bet.
But yes, there was a big difference in how I looked after myself physically and mentally and emotionally through those two births. But yeah, so I then started working with I started researching to find any doctor I could work with, an obstetrician that I could work with, that it would allow me to try for a natural birth. Really didn't want to have a cesarean if I didn't have to. But it's very interesting when you go down that rabbit hole. There is very few people these days that will allow you to have a natural birth. And even if you do, there's a good chance of it needing to become a emergency cesarean anyway.
With a breech baby, you mean?
Yes, with a breech baby.
Yeah.
So a breech birth. Sorry, there's a very few people that'll let you have a breech birth, is what I But I was a breech baby. I was born at home, and on the couch, my mum will tell you the story where the ambos arrived and they said, oh my goodness, it's bum first, and she just passed out at that point. She's absolutely
wow.
Yeah, and so apparently she lost so much blood, and I came out bum first. And
were you a planned home birth, or she just happened to come out at home?
Come at home, third baby, breech baby. And I think my dad, he's a photographer, so he was busy running around trying to find cameras, and obviously waited too long to get mum to hospital. And then I was a breech baby born at home accidentally, and mum and dad are still saying, now we've got the couch that you were born on, do you want it? So I think because I knew that I was a breech baby, I'm like, I can do this. And my mum's like, trust me, love, you do not want to do that. So I found one doctor, Dr. Lionel. His nickname in the industry is Dr. Vaginal Lionel.
Oh my goodness.
He's a local obstetrician, and he said he's probably one of the only doctors that I could find that would let you have a breech birth. And he would guide that. But again, it could resort into a cesarean anyway. Not to know, but he was very, very expensive. I was looking at $20,000 just to book in with him. So I was like, okay, I'll just try and get this baby to keep turning. So I decided to give up on that, approach. And if I had to have a cesarean, I was coming to terms with that. And at this stage, I went in for a ECV, so a external cephalic version, I think it's called. An ECV is where it's a procedure where they manually turn the baby from the outside to get the baby into a head down position so that you can have a vaginal birth. So that was 37 weeks. They generally don't like to do that past 37 weeks or even 36 weeks. And it also depends on how big the baby is. Now, this was quite a big baby, and they kept saying, wow, every time they'd measure me, well, it's a big baby. I didn't know what I was having at this stage, but they were like, it's a big baby. It's a big baby. And I'm like, can you not tell me that until I've got this baby out? Because I still need to push. And
I have a thing about some of the language that's used with pregnant women, because you know, and yeah, like the whole thing around like, oh, it's a big baby. And then all of a sudden in your mind, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you're already thinking,
Yes.
oh, this baby's too big. I can't push it
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Like,
So true. I don't know
um,
why they I don't think they realize that what they're saying.
yeah. And I think like, uh, I'm not saying that, you know, medical need or medical intervention isn't needed in labor and birth, or that things, you know, don't happen.
Mm,
But I just think, do our bodies really create a baby that is too big for us to push out? I
mm.
don't think so. From the research I've done and from listening to like midwives and things, I
Our
can't
bodies are so
believe that.
intelligent. Yeah, our bodies are so intelligent, and you're so right. They know exactly, it knows
Mm,
what to do. And I think that the size of our baby is exactly what it's designed to be. And
yeah.
yeah, so he was ended up being just shy of 10 pounds, but
Mhm.
I was very, unfortunately, that first ECV didn't work. So I was quite emotional and I was like, oh, I really don't want to have to go down this path of cesarean. And I was determined to try one more time. So the doctor said, look, it's very rare that people come back for a second ECV, but if you want to, it just means that we have to also have you on standby that if we break your waters, you are then going to be rushed straight into a cesarean. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. So I said to my husband, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. He's kind of like, all right, off you go. Like he knew I was very determined to give it a good go at this stage. So he was on standby. And I went in for a second ECV, and this time it was with two doctors. And one gave it a good go. She tried a few times, and they did it under ultrasound. And they're sort of being able to watch where the baby was positioned as they're trying to push and manipulate. And they give you an injection just so that your uterus doesn't contract. So it actually allows your
Mhm.
uterus to relax. And I had to definitely focus on my Pilates breathing through that phase because it was pretty painful.
Mm.
I just breathed and breathed, and she's like, "We're nearly there. Hang in there, breathe, yada yada," supporting me that way. But she didn't get it. So then the other doctor said, "All right, well, I've never failed, so let me have a go." And I was like, "All right." This one came in pretty determined and confident that they're going to be able to get it done. So she then gave it a go, and within the first attempt, she got him to turn. And it
Amazing. I was like hanging on the edge of my seat. Then I'm like, did this
was
baby turn?
got him to turn. It was so special. And I remember just crying because I was so grateful. And I remember because I didn't know what I was having. And I remember her saying, "Oh, we got him." And I'm like, "Him?" And she's like, "I don't know that. That's what I call all babies. Just I say him." But I was really stuck on that. I was like, "Oh, I wonder if she just slipped up and if that's what I'm going to have." And then sure enough, it was a boy. So I still wonder if that was, a
With
coincidence.
yeah.
Slip up. But anyway,
Sometimes I feel like sometimes we just call them like him or her, because I've
yeah,
had that in different appointments. And I've had both, so it could
yes.
be.
Yeah, it could be either. And it
Yeah.
doesn't feel right saying it, does it? Like it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember walking out of that room and when the doctor said, we got it. And then the nurses were all clapping, like there was a five like,
Oh.
clapping. And I was just like, yes, I felt so excited and empowered. And then I was like, right, I really am on a mission to have this baby naturally in the way that I'd hoped because I've just worked so hard to get him to turn. Um,
Mm,
so that was then my focus was learning and reading everything I could. I read a really powerful book about hypnobirthing that became my Bible.
mhm.
Um, I didn't do a hypnobirthing course, but I just read this book and I just found that it was so similar to um, the mind body modalities in Pilates that I felt like I already had that knowledge to equip myself to be able to breathe this baby earth side.
Yeah.
So
What was the book?
the book was called oh, I can't remember what it was called. I think it's just the hypnobirthing
Yeah.
birth. I'll find out and let you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Hypnobirthing something. It's a blue book. I know that much. Hypnobirth something. And so this at this stage, the baby was just shy of 38 weeks. And they were surprised that we were able to get him to turn it that late in pregnancy. But I think because it had taken so long to get him to turn, by the time I got to 40 weeks, I hadn't dropped. He hadn't dropped into my pelvis yet. So the midwife at that stage said, I think it's just going to take a few more weeks possibly for the baby to actually drop down into the birth canal. So I got to 41 weeks, and then they start talking about, okay, if you don't have this baby, we're going to need to potentially induce you. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be induced. I've been there before. And I read so much about being induced and how that can then affect your breastfeeding experience. And because obviously that was my trauma from the first birth, that I really didn't want to have to, same with both inducement and the epidural, having an effect on the baby and your milk supply and all that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to try and avoid those if I could. So I was on a very strong mission to try and have a natural birth as best I could. So sure enough, I then got to 42 weeks, and my midwife had gone on her annual leave, which I was saying before. So very sad to say bye to Mel, but she said, trust me, you're going to have a fantastic midwife. She's fairly fresh, she's young, but she will advocate for you. Anyway, this lady walked in, and I just went, I know you, like your face is really familiar. Anyway, it turned out she was a Viva Life client. She came to my studio, and I was like, oh, how funny. At first I was like, oh, this is awkward, but I was like, actually, no, this is really special.
Yeah.
And she ended up being amazing. Like, she was very new to midwifery, but she was phenomenal in supporting and advocating my every need the whole way through. And so the plan was that they did a few stretch and sweeps. When I say a few, probably like 4 or 5, to try and get the baby, to try and get my body to go into labor naturally. Still nothing. I was then booked in at 42 weeks. They start getting a little worried at this stage because there was no reason to have to induce me, because there was still enough fluid around the baby. There was baby's heart rate was fine. So generally, if there's markers there for concern, that they'll induce you, but there was no reason for concern. So I really got stuck on, okay, well, I'm 42 weeks, but is it dangerous to wait any longer? And I didn't want to take that risk. So they booked me in for a induction the next morning. And so 42 plus 1, I think it was going to fall on. Anyway, and then I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just had this really strong gut feeling that I didn't want to be induced. I'm like, this baby's coming. I know it's coming. I'm just going to sit within my body and let go of the fear and allow this baby to enter the world when he or she was ready. So I contacted the hospital, and I told them that I'd like to cancel my induction. And
how did that go?
That was really scary, because you're talking against the authoritative figure of the system. You're talking against this. Yeah. And so they were like, okay, well, if you need a rebook for tomorrow, we can rebook you for tomorrow. My midwife was great about it, but I was a little nervous about making that call. Anyway, the next day I then I remember waking up that morning feeling like I was possibly having contractions, but I wasn't sure. And then I went for a walk with my family. Again, we were in stage 4 lockdown at this stage. So it was our first stage 4 lockdown. And I remember just mum and my sister coming over, and we went for a walk through this beautiful nature reserve near my house. And it was quite hilly. And I remember thinking, okay, well, if my water's going to break, this is the best time for it. And sure enough, halfway through that walk, I remember saying, guys, I think I'm peeing my pants and I can't stop it. Is this normal? And I'm looking at mum, and she's just seeing this puddle. I'm like, because I had my waters broken manually the first pregnancy. So anyway, but I remember feeling this pop and then peeing my pants, that it felt like. And so we then finished our walk. We got to the cafe, and I said, can I use your bathroom? I didn't tell them, just to clean myself up because my waters are just broken. But we ordered our coffee and then started walking home. And then that walk home, holy moly, it got more and more intense very quickly. And I remember our plan was to always labor at home for as long as possible. And my mum and my sister were my support people in that. And I really was sad that I wasn't going to get to have them in the hospital. I was at least able to bring my husband to the hospital, but I wanted my family to be there for that, and especially my sister who has had 4 amazing home births. So
Mm.
she was amazing. And I remember having my 12-year-old son, my first boy, sitting there reading me, the breathing tips and helping massage my back. It was really special,
Oh, beautiful.
being surrounded by so much love.
Mm.
And I ended up getting I hired a TENS machine. So I had the TENS machine on, which highly recommend to any of the mums listening to this, that
Mm.
if you're trying to go for the natural birth route, that's a beautiful, it's just a really, beautiful support to distract you. That's really what it was a
Yeah.
distraction from the pain. And then I started feeling nauseous. I remember I'd probably labored at home for about an hour and a half, and I started feeling really nauseous. And I think that's when my mum started to panic, because she's like, you are not having this baby at home, because I've been there, done that, and I don't want to see you go down that path. And I remember feeling like I had to cock a leg. I had to lift one leg, and mum's like, oh, just the look on her face was sheer panic. Like, nah, okay, these are all signs that that baby's coming, and this baby's coming fast. So we rang the midwife, and they got the bath ready. So as soon as I arrived, I was able to go straight into the bath. But the drive there was hilarious. I remember mum had her hazards on. My sister's driving behind us, and mum's weaving through traffic like I'm about to give birth in the car. It was hilarious. I was on all in the back seat because obviously waited till the very last minute to get to hospital. And oh, just mum beeping traffic, and it was just so funny. I was waiting for the cops to pull us over or something, but we got there safely. And then my sister and my mum just gave me the biggest cuddle before I walked into that hospital. And mum had flown up to the front of the emergency, and there was these tradesmen there, and they're like, do you need a doctor? And it's like, she's having a baby. Like, she was like off a movie. It was so funny. And then the nurse waltzes out all casually, and I think because of mum's energy and reactions was making me like, oh my God, this is happening. And like, you start to, you feel the level of their worry and panic. But as soon as the nurse walked up and said, would you like a wheelchair? I said, no, no, I'm happy to walk in. I just had to walk between contractions, and gave my family a kiss goodbye. And I said, I'll see you in a few hours, because my plan was to have the baby and then go home as soon as I could after.
Yeah.
And I think it's a minimum of 5 hours or 6 hours that they make you stay in for, because I wanted to be back with my family as quick as I could. So I went in and went straight into the bath. And this is the tricky part, is they generally will want to monitor you, and they want to be able to put those, is it the ECG straps around your belly to monitor the baby's heart rate?
CTG, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't, if I had that on, I couldn't have the bath. And I said, can't I just do the old school Doppler where you guys can hear the baby's heart rate? So I was able to then have the bath. And again, that was something that midwife advocated for me, because it's you just told what to do.
Yeah. It's not it's not standard. They just do whatever's routine if you don't question things, I think.
Yes. And that's the thing. That's the whole purpose of sharing here in this beautiful series that you've got for women, Triss, is allowing them to know that there are other options. It's just being aware of them and knowing how to ask for them, and being supported in that.
Yeah.
So I was able to then be in the bath without any machine strapped to me, and I just, felt every bloody contraction. And I remember thinking, I thought there was this surge, and then the contractions meant to drop away, but there was this surge, and then the contractions were not dropping away. And I remember saying to the midwife, it's not letting go. It's not stopping. It's not stopping. And I just, at that point, I thought to myself, oh my God, you wanted a natural birth. You are crazy. You pushed for this breech, for the baby to be spun, and then you push for a natural birth. And I was, somewhat regretting that at that point, because it was so bloody painful. But would I do it again? Absolutely. It was the most amazing experience to watch your body be able to move through a pain at that level. It's a threshold that I'd never been to before. And my husband was in the bath with me, and the midwife has beautiful photos. I didn't even know she was taking photos, but she took all these photos on my phone, and to look back in that, and some of the videos that she took as well, like being able to hear, it was a moan and the groans that were coming from me that were so powerful. And just, I don't know how to explain it. Like it was just
Mm,
next level out of this world experience. That it wasn't pain in those moans and groans. It was
mm,
determination. It was, I'm working with my baby here. Like I felt every time that the midwife would put the Doppler on and she would tell me that the baby's heart rate's getting lower and lower, not lower and dropping, it's getting closer towards, coming out into the world,
mm,
motivated me more and more. So I knew that the baby was moving, and it was all about my mindset around knowing that me and him were working together. And that's really how I felt like I brought him into the world, is we then breathed him out. And I remember thinking, it was quite an active birth. I didn't have him in the water. I was then out of the bath at that point, but I was holding on to my husband, and I just remember swaying, and then him saying, I need to go to the toilet. I'm like, oh, no, 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 you're not going
oh.
anywhere. You can stay where you're standing, because that's not happening. Not now. And I remember he was like busting to go to the toilet. So the poor midwife had to slide in underneath where he was standing so I could hang on her, because I just couldn't at that point. The things they do is all very special. But and I remember the midwife saying, when I see the baby's head is when I'll push the button, and that's when another midwife will come in. There's nothing wrong. It just means that's when the other midwife will come in, because we need two of us once the baby starts to come out. And so I kept saying, when are you pushing the button? When are you pushing the button? Because the baby's coming. And they even gave me a mirror so that I could see myself crowning, which I wasn't sure if I
Mhm.
want to do that, but it was really, really powerful to know that I was almost there. That's what it was
Mm.
about. It was knowing that I was getting closer and closer to meeting my baby, being able to hold my baby, and for the pain to finish. So the mirror was actually really, really really, really helpful in that particular moment. And then once the baby's head started to crown, I remember thinking, so his head came out, and then they said, breathe. Remember my first pregnancy, and they were telling me, breathe through your contractions, but when we tell you to stop, stop. And I
Yes.
stopped with the first one. But this time I'd read a lot about perineal massage, which is things that I'd done in preparation, but
Mhm.
also breathing. So when the baby had crowned, trying to hold that for as long as possible and just breathe through
Mhm.
that particular moment to allow yourself to naturally continue to open up. And then the baby was more likely to come through with ease without a tear, or that was the aim, is trying not to tear
Mhm.
like I had my first pregnancy.
And were you doing like long breaths at this stage, or were they more like the
Yeah.
short sort of like, what was the breathing
Uh,
like?
I was trying, it was short, sharp,
Mm.
because that's naturally what I wanted to go with, but I
Mhm.
had to drag it out. I encouraged myself to drag it out to long,
Mm.
big breaths. And I think for a little bit longer, when the baby's head's completely out, I was able to breathe into it a little longer the more I stayed in that. And
Mm.
then they said, okay, well, when you're ready, are you ready to meet your baby? And that was so beautiful, because it was so rushed, the first birth. Whereas this time I was like, oh my God, okay, so you're telling me. And she's like, this is one more push, Karen, and your baby's here. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember looking at my husband, I said, are you ready? Like, we've got this. We've got this. And he's like, you're motivating me. I should be motivating you. It was so special. And he was just laughing. He's like, all right, yep, I'm ready. And then sure enough, the extra midwife came in, and we pushed, and then they passed this massive baby into my arms. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, I did it. Like, I'm so fucking proud of myself. I did it. And then I didn't even know what I had. Didn't even ask or check. And I'm just cuddling this baby. And I remember thinking, its head was on my left breast, and then its feet were wrapped around, touching the bed, the hospital bed next. It was so long. He was 57 centimeters long. And I was like,
Oh
oh
my
my
goodness.
God. And they're like, do you want to know what you've had, Karen? And I'm like, yes, what is it? And they're like, it's a little boy. And it's really special. And then, oh, just all those feelings that flow over you when you've just achieved something so magical. Not only what our bodies are capable of doing by growing a little human, and then watching what your bodies are capable of doing to bring it earthside when you trust it. I think that was the biggest thing. I really trusted my body was capable of doing this. And I worked with my body, and I worked with my baby, and I knew that we knew how to work together as a team. It was really special.
Oh,
And so, you in that moment of just absolute awe, and the tears are flowing, and it's probably really emotional for you
I,
listening to
I, I feel like I'm literally sitting here. I've got tears in my eyes. I'm like, I'm 38 weeks pregnant. All this oxytocin talking about this, I'm going to go into labor
Yes.
myself.
Well, you had no idea where my story was going to go. We hadn't talked about this
I hadn't heard
recording.
this. So
I'm really glad that this is a positive story for you. Not to scare you for what,
oh
it
gosh.
might make you feel a little bit more excited as to what's.
No, I think it's so beautiful, and what I've really taken away is just this feeling of you being so empowered, and this feeling of like I am so, excuse my language, but fucking capable
Yes.
of like, anything really.
Mhm.
And like that's what I really heard from, a lot of what you were saying. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
beautiful message to send women, because we I think it's really common to fear childbirth, and I understand why, and of course we all have fears going into it, but it's so common to fear because of the stories we hear, or because we see in movies women screaming in
Yeah.
pain, and
Yeah.
to understand the natural physiological childbirth and how that happens, and how all our beautiful hormones work to help us through that, and to understand how powerful we are to really like walk through that fire and come out the other side is
Absolutely.
just beautiful to hear.
Oh, and you know what, Chris? I became really obsessed with listening to Australian birth stories. So, that's what your podcast is giving other women. Your podcast is giving other women an opportunity to hear all kinds of stories and just be really empowered to know that they're just as capable as the women that have walked the path before us too. So
Mm,
I think that's really
yes.
cool. But I
Oh,
remember standing up and having a shower after Billy was born, little Billy Harvey, we called him. um, and just it was a moment of a flashback as to standing in the shower after my first baby and looking down at like my poor vagina and my stretch marks, and I was so sad as to what my body was going through that first birth. But this time, standing in that shower and looking down at my body, and I'm going to try and say this without crying, but I just hugged my body and I was just like crying of such admiration as to what it had just achieved for me. I was like, I'm so grateful for you. And I hugged it and I just touched all my loose, stretched belly and, just embraced all of the changes that had happened, with my birth through my body through pregnancy. But what it had just achieved for me was
mm,
out of this world. And I was in absolute admiration as to what I'd accomplished. So that was, all of those beautiful oxytocin hormones flowing as well, obviously. But at that stage, I walked out. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go home now. And she's like, hey, hang on, Karen. Like, I want to bring my family. I want them to be able to see. Obviously, my husband wasn't allowed to stay for long after the birth. I think they were allowed to stay for an hour, and then they were trying to get him to go home. But my midwife was great. She said, just stay in your room, and I'm sure no one will even know. So, as I said, it was stage 4 lockdown, so it was all pretty strict. But we managed to. I did tear with my second birth, so I had to get stitched up before I went home. We had opted not to have any injections for Billy, so they just did his little checkovers and made sure everything was fine. But we definitely didn't want to get the vitamin K just for us, our
mhm.
family. We didn't feel a need for that. And then we were able to discharge ourselves after 6 hours. And my family, it was midnight at this stage, and my family were sitting in the car park waiting. And my son came running out of the car going, what is it? Do I have a brother or a sister? This was so gorgeous. And I'm like, got a little brother, and he was just in such awe of this gorgeous little baby. So it was really special to come home and then just be at home, healing and having. I knew that if I stayed in hospital and my husband wasn't going to be there, that I'd probably be less likely to have a good night's sleep.
Mm.
So I knew that by coming home was the right thing for me to be able to really rest and recover after such a big journey, and know that I had the right support around me if I needed anyone. So that was really, really special. And then I had
Oh,
a good baby bubble period where, being locked down, I definitely had lots of deliveries of food and flowers, and so many clients delivered food and friends. And we had meals like every night for about a month. It was
oh, I
amazing.
love that. Perfect. That's what you want.
I know. So they set up, my sister set up a program. It is a program. I think it's called, meals. Oh, I can't remember. I'll find out the name. Have you heard of the food train that there's out?
Like a meal train where
Yeah.
where people cook your meals and bring them over.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
program or it's an app or whatever it was, but she set
Yes.
it
Okay.
up and
Yep.
then people could put in, all right, Fiona's going to do this night and Sarah's going to do this night. And so I had people delivering food all the time. It was so
Oh,
special.
I love
It meant
that.
that we could just really sit in the little bubble and Billy latched, like the whole breastfeeding journey was so different. And I really do believe it was because my body and my mind was in a whole different level as to the first time. And maybe because I didn't have the drugs that made a difference. But he latched and breastfeeding was so much easier, an absolute
Mm,
day and night experience. So yeah, I think the hardest part for me was um I think the hardest part for me was being around. Um, no, I've lost it. Sorry, I've lost it.
that's
I think
okay.
I think the best part, I should say, the best part was being around people and having connection. Um,
Mm,
and the hardest part, the first time, that's what I was trying to say, was not being around the right support and not having the right guidance. Um,
mm,
whereas the second time round, I just felt so much more empowered and capable, and I knew that my body could do it. So yeah, there were
beautiful.
definitely different experiences, but I think the biggest thing is that educating yourself, knowledge is power, and that's what became my motto, is knowledge is power, and that I was going to equip myself with all I could possibly equip myself with to bring this baby safely to earth. It was really special.
I love that. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Like, oh, just it's yeah, beautiful story. And I love the, you've sort of taken your first experience and then really thought about, what you wanted for second experience and worked with that and
Yeah.
empowered yourself. And that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, it was so special. And I think the second time round, you just maybe being a little bit older too, and having such a big age gap, I just soak it up so much more because the first
Mm.
time we're learning, whereas the second, every moment I was all about being as present as I can possibly be. Even this morning, he wants to ride to kindergarten, even if it's raining. And I just, you know what, we're going to do that. Like, know that he's my last baby, so I'm soaking up every second I can, and especially after the last year of illness, it's been really confronting to think
Mm.
that we just live through life on such autopilot that we don't really sit to look at our babies as often as we should, and learning to move at a slower pace and knowing that the world will wait if we just need to spend days where we just cuddle our babies up, and that's what it's all about. Hey, that's what our main purpose in life is just to look after our babies and ourselves and before anything else. So
I
that's been
love that.
it for me. Yeah.
So many wisdoms in that, really, truly.
Mm.
It's beautiful.
Honey. Well, thank you for letting me share
Thank
the
you.
story.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for coming on and sharing. And I will also link in the show notes where we can find you online. Do you want to let people know where we can find you and Viva Life?
Yeah, beautiful. So you can always jump onto our socials, which is our handle is at Viva Life Pilates on Instagram, or just Viva Life Pilates and Fitness .com.au on the website. We do offer a lot of pre and postnatal Pilates, so we accommodate clients from the whole way through, the start to the end. And we don't, so there's some studios where you'll get turned away after 20 weeks. We encourage you to move the whole way through. My thing is that you are training for the biggest workout of your life, so why not continue to move? And
Yeah.
so we definitely have an environment where we support women through that. And then once they've had their babies, they come back, say 6 weeks later, and we get to cuddle their babies while they get to do a class. It's really special. So we
Oh,
offer
gorgeous.
mums to come and do a class while their babies are non-mobile. Once they're mobile, it's a bit harder, but non-mobile. And it just gives women a space to be able to make time for themselves and reclaim their bodies back.
I
Special.
love that. I
Mm,
love that. And I'm gonna look for the meal train
yes.
service that you used as well. And I'll link that because I think that's really valuable for women as well. But for anyone else listening, if you've got a friend or family member who's just had a baby, drop off food.
Oh, food's the best. It was just the best gift. I definitely,
Mm.
yeah. You know, people want to give in that time, so it's
Yeah.
something that they don't have to worry about is cooking. They can just stay in that baby bubble for as long as possible. Mm.
Amazing. Thank you.
Good luck on your journey, honey. I think it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait. Do you know what you're having?
No, I don't know. Haven't
Oh, I
found
love
out.
Yes, that's so special. So I'll look forward to hearing when your bub's due, and then maybe I'll make one of your delicious recipes that you've given me. Maybe I can drop that off to you.
You're a gem.
Thank you, Tris.
Thanks for joining us on the Empowered Flow podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd love you to share it with a friend and take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. Your support means the world and fuels our mission to empower women everywhere. You can also reach out to me on Instagram at Tris Alexandra Nutrition. Sending big love. I'll catch you in the next episode.